Home. Home, happiness, love, passion. It means different things to everybody. They say home is where the heart is. And I know people say, I like to get away, but I can't wait to get home. Now, you'd never hear me say that because I get my happiness and passion from travel. It started when I was young. Dad used to take me and my brother to the airport to watch airplanes, and I fell in love with the airplanes and the airlines. When I took my first airline trip, I was maybe 5 years old. I was hooked as soon as the wheels left the ground. And after that, I couldn't get enough. I'd read everything I could. I loved airline ads in the newspapers because they normally had pictures of planes. I started collecting airline memorabilia. My favorite was airline timetables. Now, when I was old enough, my mom and dad would let me take the Metro bus from Fairfax Circle to National Airport to watch planes. And that was when anybody could go through security. So I'd go through security down to the gates, and I'd just pester the gate agents to take me on planes. I actually was pretty successful at that. And I also rode to the FAA and got a couple behind-the-scenes tours at both National and Dulles Airport. So, and although I did that, I rarely ever flew anywhere. I remember I saved for 2 years for my Washington Star paper route, so I could go and visit my aunt and uncle and cousins out in Thousand Oaks, California. It's outside LA. And I must admit that I was much more excited about the flights than I was about visiting my relatives. So a few months before the trip was to happen, I found out that my best friend Rich was also going out to California that summer. And so we worked it out so we could fly together. Now the day had finally arrived, and this would be my first long trip, 5 hours long. This would be my first time that I was on a plane where they had movies. They showed Network that day. And this would be the first time I'd be on a wide-body aircraft. It was TWA Flight 19 from Dulles to Los Angeles, and it was operated by a Lockheed L-1011 TriStar, for those of you who like planes. Now, as soon as they started to show the movie, I lost interest in that. My interest was looking out the window and watching the world go by below me. And I remember how cool it was when they announced we were flying over St. Louis, and I saw the Gateway Arch's shadow on the ground. Now, Rich and I loved to fly so much that we decided we wanted to prolong this trip as long as we could. So we decided we were going to be the last people off that plane. And on the way out, we stopped in the cockpit and we got to meet the pilots, which was very cool for us. Not so much for Rich's grandma who had come to pick him up. Because as we were walking out of the jetway, we could see her scurrying and dancing around, worried that, well, had we got lost? Had we walked past her? Had we maybe not even gotten on the plane at all? But in the end, it was all okay. 2 weeks later, when I got home, I was really bummed. I wanted that trip to go on forever. And in fact, I was hoping I'd get jet lag just so I could prolong my trip. But I knew that I wanted to be around airplanes for my entire life. And so after high school and some college, I got a job working on the ramp at BWI for Piedmont Airlines. Now, Piedmont allowed their employees unlimited space available travel from the date that they were hired. And I worked there for about 14 months. And during that time, I took about 50 trips. I mean, I just went everywhere. A real good favorite pastime for me and my coworkers was the day trip. We'd go from Baltimore down to either Orlando or Tampa. But the thing that really sort of excited me was when I found out that Piedmont employees were allowed to fly in the extra seat in the cockpit called the jump seat with the approval of the captain. Now, I didn't do this very much, but I loved flying up there. Watching the pilots at work is awesome, and also what you can see out the windows is unbelievable. The first trip that I took in the jump seat was from Norfolk, Virginia to New York's LaGuardia Airport, and the approach into New York was unbelievable. I mean, we flew past the Empire State Building and all the big buildings down in Lower Manhattan and the World Trade Center. But the coolest thing was flying over the Statue of Liberty and Liberty Island on the way in. I left Piedmont and took a job with United working on the ramp at Dulles, where I've been for the past 31 years. And that began the longest travel drought of my life. You see, United required you to have 1 year seniority before you got your travel benefits. So for that year, I plotted and planned where I was going to go. And after I thought about it, I decided I wanted to go out to Seattle, a place that I'd always wanted to go to. Now, I like the city out there, but the main reason I went out there was I could take a tour of the Boeing facility out in Everett, Washington, where they build the 747s. And that building there is probably one of the largest buildings in the world. It was awesome. Now, for the past 31 years, I've traveled all over. I've even gone overseas. But I'm still that young 15-year-old kid when I get on a plane with my best buddy Rich on my first long flight, because I love to sit by the window and watch the world go by. That's probably my favorite in-flight entertainment is sitting on the window. Now, in 1987, a couple of friends of mine asked me if I wanted to go on a cruise. Now, we had never been on a cruise before, and we were a little worried whether we'd like it or not, and I was a little worried about getting seasick. So we decided to take a 4-night cruise to the Bahamas. And I remember saying to them after the first day, because I fell in love with cruising immediately, I said, we have to do this again. We have to do this for at least a week. And so I've been cruising ever since. In fact, in those 30 years, I've probably been on 80 or 90 cruises. I think that cruising has actually surpassed flying in my favorite way to travel, because cruising, when you're cruising for a week, there's 100 activities that you can probably go to, but you don't have to. You can do as much or as little as you like. And I sometimes just like to sit on promenade deck and just watch the ocean and the waves. It's actually very peaceful. It makes me feel pretty content. I probably feel more peaceful on a ship than I do at home. Now, I still like to fly, but the last few years, flying has not been fun. It's the planes are smaller, the seats are narrower, there's not much service on board, and the flights always seem to be full. So it's not my favorite way to travel, but I still enjoy it. My favorite place to cruise is St. Martin. Now, I'm not a big beach person, but there's a beach there called Maho Bay, and I love Maho Bay because that's where my love of airlines and airplanes and cruises are combined. Because Maho is about 100 yards off the end of the runway in St. Martin. And if you've seen those pictures where it looks like the planes are landing on the beach, and you think they might be fake, they're not. That's exactly what it's like, and it's great. Now, my favorite part of cruising, though, is something very simple. When I can, on the first day of the cruise, when we're leaving port for the very first time and entering the ocean, I like to go as far forward on the ship as I can. As you get closer to the ocean, the rolling of the ship and the pitch increases, the wind starts blowing. For me, it's a great way to start a vacation and really peaceful. Now, my love of travel hit me just a few years ago. I remember I had two big thoughts, but I was back on my favorite ship, which is called the Freedom of the Seas. I've cruised on Freedom at least 10 times now, and I was walking down the Royal Promenade. Now, this is like the main area of the ship. It's almost like you're walking in a mall. There's shops and cafes, and there's actually even cabins that overlook it. And I was walking down the Royal Promenade by myself, just taking everything in. And I had a couple of thoughts. The first was, man, I really love to travel. And the second one, it just hit me, and I remember it right to this day so much. I said to myself, I feel like I'm at home. Thank you.